I didn't expect the world to change over a glass of Merlot. But there she was, Lila, standing barefoot in our kitchen, one hand wrapped around a half-full glass, the other resting casually on the counter like she wasn't about to detonate a bomb in the center of our marriage. She wore my favorite black silk robe, the one that clung to her like a second skin, revealing just enough thigh to stir something in me. And maybe that was the point. "I want to try something," she said, her voice light. Too light. I looked up from my laptop. "Try what?" Her lips curved, but there was no warmth in it. "An open marriage." There it was. I stared at her, sure I'd misheard. "You're joking." She didn't blink. "No. I've been thinking about it for a while." For a second, I just sat there, numb. A slow static started behind my eyes. Disbelief, then confusion, then something colder. "You mean, sleeping with other people?" "For excitement. And self-discovery." She sipped her wine like it was just another Tuesday. "It's not like we're falling apart, right? But things have been stagnant." My mouth was suddenly dry. I set my laptop aside, stood, and walked toward her, needing to see her face up close. "Stagnant? Is that what we are now?" "I didn't mean it like that." She looked away. "We're still us. I love you. But maybe loving someone isn't enough anymore." 1,000 words surged to my throat, but none made it out. I thought about the last time we'd had sex, 3 weeks ago, a quick, half-hearted tangle of limbs before bed. We didn't look at each other much anymore. But still, "You've already got someone in mind, don't you?" I asked. She flinched. "That's not fair. That's not a denial." Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I didn't scream, didn't rage. I just walked to the bedroom, packed a bag with 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my shaving kit, and my passport. Don't ask me why. Maybe part of me hoped I'd wake up tomorrow in another country, someone else entirely. "Where are you going?" she asked from the doorway, her voice tight now. "I don't know. Downtown." Her bare feet padded after me down the hall. "This doesn't have to be a big deal, Caleb. We're not breaking up." "Yes," I said, turning to her. "We are. You just don't realize it yet." She looked stricken, as if I'd slapped her. "It's just sex." "No," I said, my voice lower now, calmer. "It's the door you opened without asking if I wanted to walk through it." I moved into a short-term rental downtown that night. It was a modern building, 6 floors high, mostly studios and 1-bedrooms, the kind of place for people in transition. Divorcees, interns, burned-out executives, or, in my case, someone whose wife just asked for permission to fuck strangers under the banner of growth. The concierge gave me a polite smile and a folder full of paperwork. "You're in 202. She said, handing me a keycard. "2nd floor, left side, city view." The hallway smelled like fresh paint and lemon polish. It was sterile, clean, empty, just like I felt. My apartment was sparse but livable. A small kitchen, a queen bed, a window facing a neon-lit alley that glowed pink and orange after sundown. I dropped my bag and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the beige walls. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. I just sat there, trying to remember the last time I felt like a man instead of a placeholder in someone else's life. The next morning, I walked down the hall in search of coffee. There was a communal space on the ground floor, coffee machine, worn leather chairs, a bookshelf full of rejected paperbacks. I poured a cup, leaned against the counter, and watched people pass through the lobby. That's when I saw her. She had a limp, barely noticeable, but the way she moved was like she used to dance. Still elegant, controlled. She had auburn hair pulled into a messy bun and wore a thin gray tank top that revealed a hint of a black sports bra underneath. Her eyes flicked up and caught mine. She smiled politely, then limped into the elevator and disappeared. Room 204, I'd learn later. But not yet. For now, she was just a woman with a limp and a ghost of something I hadn't felt in months, curiosity. By day 3, Lila hadn't called. Not even a text. And I didn't reach out either. Maybe I should have been angry. Maybe I should have wanted revenge. But all I felt was hollow. Not broken. Just emptied out. Like someone had drained the color from my life, and I was walking around in grayscale. But that was about to change. Because 2 days later, I'd see the woman from the hallway again. This time, she wasn't limping. This time, she was crying. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something sharp and undeniable stir inside me. Not pity, not hope, but the sense that my story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. She was sitting on the floor outside her door, room 204, when I turned the corner with a bag of groceries. Her legs were folded beneath her like a ballerina mid-rehearsal, and her arms were wrapped tight around her knees. Eyes red, nose blotchy, phone beside her, screen dimmed. She looked up when she heard me, startled like I'd walked into her private pain. Locked out? I asked gently. She gave a weak laugh, then wiped her cheek with the back of her wrist. No, just avoiding going in. Fair enough. I hesitated, then did something I hadn't done in a while. I knelt down, placed the groceries against the wall, and sat across from her. I'm Caleb, I said. Mia. The silence between us felt strangely comfortable. I didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't offer. But that moment, two strangers on a hallway floor, backs to the world, was real in a way my marriage hadn't been in months. You live in 202? She asked after a minute. I nodded. Just moved in. New to the building? New to everything, I said, chuckling. Life kind of flipped the table on me. Mia tilted her head, studying me. You've got that look. What look? My life used to be a lot more stable, and now I'm afraid to buy bananas because I might not be here long enough to eat them. Look. I laughed. Actually laughed. You're not wrong. She smiled, then winced as she shifted her leg. You okay? She nodded too quickly. Just overdid it in PT. Point. Physical therapy. I was a dancer. Ballet. She gave a small shrug. Torn Achilles. End of the road. There was bitterness in her tone, but not self-pity. It was the sound of someone trying to accept something they never wanted. Can I ask a totally inappropriate question? I said. She raised a brow, amused. That depends on how inappropriate. Was it worth it? All the years of dancing, even if it ended like this? Mia stared down the hallway like she was looking at a stage only she could see. Every damn second. And just like that, I saw her. Not the woman crying in a hallway, but the fire beneath it. The precision. The discipline. The passion. It reminded me of something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Do you want to come in? She asked suddenly. Not like, just. I made tea earlier, and I don't want to drink it alone. I hesitated for only a heartbeat before nodding. Sure. Her apartment was small, cozy. A pair of ballet slippers hung on a nail above the couch. The coffee table was cluttered with books about anatomy, dance injuries, and grief. The kettle still sat warm on the stove. She poured 2 mugs, chamomile, and sat across from me on the floor. Her injured legs stretched out on a small cushion. Sorry about earlier, she said after a sip. The crying. You don't need to apologize for being human. I do it too much lately. You ever try just letting it come when it needs to? Mia laughed dryly. Dancers are taught to push through pain. Crying isn't really part of the rehearsal schedule. I watched her fingers wrap around the mug. Her hands were delicate, but there was strength in them too. Like everything about her had been sculpted by years of demanding precision. She had a quiet beauty that snuck up on you, the kind that didn't demand attention but earned it with every glance. I'm guessing you didn't always live here, I said. Nope. I had a brownstone in Brooklyn. Sold it after the injury. This place was supposed to be a short stop until I figured out who I was without dance. Any luck? She looked at me with a half smile. Maybe. You? I'm still waiting for the fog to lift. We sat like that for a long time, sipping tea, not needing to fill every silence. When she got up to put the mugs in the sink, she limped slightly, catching herself on the counter. Without thinking, I walked over, placing a steadying hand on her lower back. She stiffened for half a second, then relaxed. Sorry, I said softly, pulling my hand away. Habit. No, it's okay, she whispered. Our eyes met, close now, too close. I could smell the faint citrus in her hair, feel the warmth of her breath. Something stirred between us. Not lust, not yet, but something gentler. A tether. I should probably go, I said, voice low. She nodded, stepping back slightly. Thanks for sitting with me. Anytime. I walked to the door, hand on the handle, when she said, Hey, Caleb. Yeah. I hope she regrets it. I didn't answer, but I gave her the smallest smile before disappearing back into the hallway. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Lila still hadn't texted, but my mind wasn't on her anymore. It was on a girl with a torn Achilles, who poured me tea with shaky hands and let me see her cry. And for the first time since I moved in, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I felt seen. I didn't plan on meeting Harper. Not that day. It was a Wednesday mid-morning. The kind of day that didn't know what it wanted to be. Half sunlight, half drizzle. I'd just gotten back from a job interview I already knew I wasn't getting. You can always tell by the way they say, "We'll be in touch." I was juggling a coffee, keys, and my phone when the elevator door opened on the third floor, and I nearly collided with her. Blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail, wearing a faded hoodie and bike shorts that hugged her hips too perfectly. She had a cardboard box under one arm and a bottle of wine under the other. "Whoa," I muttered, catching her mid-stumble. She looked up, startled, and then narrowed her eyes. "You're new," she said flatly. "Yeah, 202. Harper, 305. You look like someone who doesn't know where the hell he's going." Accurate. She adjusted the box in her arms and gave me a quick once-over. Not flirtatious, just assessing. "Can you hold the door?" I stepped aside, letting her through. She marched down the hall barefoot, dropped the box with a grunt in front of her door, and turned back to me. "You coming? We're just gonna admire the view?" I blinked. What?" Harper smirked. "I meant the hallway. Relax, pretty boy. You're not my type." "Right. Of course." But I still followed her inside. Her apartment was chaos, but the kind that felt intentional. Open laptops on the kitchen counter, a half-finished jigsaw on the dining table, post-it notes with scribbles stuck to the fridge. There was an energy in the air, like the apartment had caffeine running through its veins. "Wine?" she asked, already opening the bottle. "It's 10:30 in the morning." "Exactly." I shrugged. "Sure." She handed me a chipped mug that said, "Best programmer ever," and filled it halfway. "To divorce," she said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers. "To whatever comes after." She studied me over the rim of her drink. "So, what's your deal?" I sipped. "Wife wanted an open marriage." I didn't. "Damn," she said. "She say it during sex or over brunch?" "Kitchen. Merlot." "Classy. Let me guess. She thought she was being brave. Empowered. Self-discovery, right?" I stared. "How did you?" Harper snorted. "Because I was her. 5 years ago." That surprised me. "You asked your husband for an open marriage?" "Yup." She plopped onto the couch, pulled one leg up. I thought I was bored. Really, I was just avoiding admitting I'd stopped loving him. So I tried to outsource intimacy. I sat down across from her, taking in the sharp lines of her jaw, the tiny scar near her left eyebrow, the way she didn't bother hiding her mess. "How'd it end?" "He left." "Good for him." She smirked. I thought I'd feel liberated. Mostly I just missed the way he made coffee exactly the way I liked it. Hazards of self-discovery. Harper looked at me for a long beat. "You angry?" I paused. I think I skipped angry. Went straight to quiet. That's the dangerous kind. Why? Because quiet men do the craziest shit. An hour later, I was still there. We'd gone from wine to cheap whiskey. She showed me her work, a tech consultant gig that had her flying out every other week. Her ex got the house. She kept the dog. The dog died a year later. She didn't cry, just poured another drink. I told her about Mia, about the tea, the limp, the sadness that clung to her like silk. Harper listened, then smirked. "She sounds like a novel." "She's soft." "You like soft." I looked at her. "I used to. And now." I didn't answer. Not out loud. Because Harper had already closed the distance between us. Her fingers brushed my wrist. "Light at first, then firmer." "No strings," she murmured. "I'm not sure I should." She smiled. "You should. You just don't know it yet." Then she kissed me. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't slow. It was heat and hunger and something deeper. Two people trying to climb out of their own wreckage by touching something that still felt alive. Her hands pulled me toward her like she'd already decided. I didn't resist. We ended up tangled on the floor, half-dressed, breathless, laughing in between gasps. She bit my shoulder once, not hard enough to bruise, but enough to remind me I was still flesh. Still wanted. Afterward, we lay side by side, staring at the ceiling. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know." "Good answer." She rolled toward me, tracing a line down my chest with her fingertip. "You'll see," she whispered. She thought you'd fall apart. Instead, you'll become someone she doesn't recognize. I didn't say anything, but I knew she was right. That night, back in my apartment, I showered twice. Not because I felt dirty, but because I wasn't sure which version of myself I wanted to be next. The one who still loved the idea of Lila? Or the one who just spent the afternoon tangled in Harper's sheets, reminded that maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe I was just waking up. I met Blair by accident, twice in the same day. The first time was in the laundry room. I'd gone down early, hoping to beat the mid-morning rush of mismatched socks and forgotten dryer sheets. She was already there, barefoot, tank top loose, hair piled on her head like a storm cloud held together by sheer defiance. Ink trailed up one bare arm like ivy. Symbols, names, moons. There was a smear of ink on her cheek, too. Pen ink, not tattoo. "You're new," she said without looking up from the washer she was slamming shut. "I get that a lot. Because you walk like someone who still thinks people notice." I blinked. "That's poetic." "I'm a writer," she said, spinning on her heel. "We don't know how to talk normal." I liked her instantly. She offered me a mug of coffee, black, aggressively strong, and said, "I'm Blair. For '08. If I ever leave this building, it's usually for cigarettes or whiskey or both." I asked, "You write novels?" She nodded. "Mostly about heartbreak. Currently writing one about betrayal." "Sounds fun. It's cheaper than therapy." The second time we crossed paths that day was at 11:47 p.m. I couldn't sleep. My apartment felt like an echo chamber of thoughts. I wandered up to the rooftop for air. Blair was already there, sitting on a beanbag with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and a notebook in her lap. "You stalking me?" she asked without looking up. "You think highly of yourself." She snorted. "You're not wrong." I sat a few feet away and offered her the flask I'd brought. She took a swig. "You married?" "Was. Sort of still am. It's complicated." "They always say that," she muttered, scribbling something down. "Who?" "Men in free fall." I laughed, despite myself. "That obvious?" "To me?" "Yeah." We sat in silence for a moment. The city below was humming its sleepless rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. A dog barked. Life moved on. "What's your book really about?" I asked. She glanced at me sideways. "A man who doesn't know who he is until someone betrays him so completely. He has to burn down the life he thought he wanted." "Sounds autobiographical." She nodded. Every writer bleeds into the page. There was something magnetic about Blair. She wasn't beautiful in the polished, magazine cover way. She was raw, unfiltered. You could feel the current in her, even when she was still. "Want to see something?" she asked suddenly. "Sure." She stood, dropped the blanket, and walked toward the metal stairs leading to the upper roof, the part technically off limits. I followed, of course. Up there, wind whipped harder. She turned to face me, hair flying wild, eyes alight. "This is where I come when I want to remind myself I'm real," she said. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out a black marker. "Take off your shirt." I hesitated. "What?" "You said your wife doesn't know who you are anymore. I'm giving you something she can't take from you." I pulled my shirt over my head. Blair stepped closer, the tip of the marker cold as she drew a small symbol on my chest, right over the heart. It was simple. A triangle, open at the top, with a dot in the center. "What is it?" I asked. "Rebirth," she said. When I met her eyes, I felt something shift. Like I'd stumbled into a version of myself I didn't recognize, but didn't want to run from either. And then, without ceremony, she kissed me. It wasn't rushed. Wasn't primal. It was slow, deliberate. A writer's kiss. Like she was composing a sentence with her mouth and needed to get the punctuation just right. When she pulled away, I exhaled. "I wasn't expecting that," I said. Blair just smirked. No one ever expects a plot twist. We didn't sleep together that night. Instead, we lay under a shared blanket, her head on my chest, the marker drawing still fresh between us. She told me about her last lover, a married woman who promised to leave her husband and never did. Blair gave up everything for her, even her family. And in the end, she was left with a manuscript and a closet full of clothes that didn't belong to her. "She ruined me," she whispered. "But also, she gave me a story." I traced the edge of the symbol on my chest with a finger. Maybe that's what we're all doing. Telling stories, trying to make sense of the wreckage. Blair closed her eyes. "You want to feel again? Let someone mark you. That's how you know you're alive." In the morning, she handed me a mug of lukewarm coffee and a note. "Some people want comfort. Others want fire. You? I think you're just learning how to burn." B. I didn't see her for the next 2 days. But the symbol stayed with me. So did the kiss. So did the quiet voice in my head whispering, "You're not who you were. You're not who she left." It started with a bang, literally. I was on my way back from the corner market, a six-pack in one hand and a frozen pizza under my arm, when I heard the unmistakable crash of something breaking on the 5th floor. A clatter of wood, the scraping of furniture, followed by a soft shit echoing down the stairwell. Curiosity pulled me up 2 flights. I wasn't looking to play hero, but part of me was bored. And the other part, the growing, unsettled part, wanted to feel useful again. Her door was half open. Room 501. Everything okay? I called out. A voice from inside. Define okay. I pushed the door wider and saw her, kneeling in front of what used to be a cabinet. Pieces of wood lay scattered across the floor, one of the doors dangling off its hinge like a wounded limb. She had her hair tied back in a simple braid, sleeves rolled up, face flushed with frustration. Looks like you fought the furniture and lost, I said. She gave a tired laugh. Yeah, well, it was either fix it or let it fall apart on its own. Guess it chose the latter. Want a hand? She hesitated, then nodded. Sure. Caleb, right? I stepped in, set my stuff on her table. Guilty. Dana, she said. Sorry for the mess. Mess builds character. Is that what we're calling it now? She handed me a screwdriver, and we got to work. It took maybe 15 minutes to fix the cabinet. It wasn't a complex job, just something that needed a second set of hands. But there was something steadying about the way she worked. No dramatics. No cursing. Just quiet determination. Her apartment was warm. Not just temperature. Something about the space felt lived in, real. A toddler's toys scattered in the corner. A corkboard full of grocery lists and school reminders. The faint smell of something sweet in the air, cinnamon or maybe nutmeg. You've got a kid? I asked, motioning toward the playpen. She nodded, wiping her brow. Benji. He's at my sister's for the night. Single mom. Yup. Sorry. She looked up, amused. For what? I don't know. That felt like the right thing to say. Dana shook her head. Don't be. I'm not broken. Just tired. We sat on the floor once the cabinet was upright again, her legs stretched out in front of her, mine crossed. She offered me water from a mason jar. Thanks, I said. For the help? For letting me in. Dana leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. You want to stay for dinner? I was going to make grilled cheese and soup. Nothing fancy, but it beats eating alone. Sold. We ate at her tiny table, knees almost touching. She used real butter on the bread. Thick slices of cheddar. No pre-sliced plastic cheese. I notice things like that now. The care people put into little moments. You live alone? She asked. Yeah. Recently separated, sort of. Sort of. Wife asked for an open marriage. I packed a bag and moved downtown. Dana's eyes softened. Wow. Yeah. It was sudden. Still trying to decide if I'm heartbroken or just hollow. She nodded. That sounds familiar. Your story. Ex-husband left when Benji was 9 months. Said he wanted to reclaim his youth. I told him he could reclaim it somewhere else. I smiled. Good for you. Not really. I cried for 2 weeks. Then I got tired of crying and started fixing things around here. We talked for hours. About being tired of being tired. About how strong you don't feel when everyone assumes you are. About the absurd weight of silence after a baby goes to sleep. There was no flirting. No pretense. Just warmth. And that, somehow, was even more intimate. Later, as I stood by her door, ready to head back to my place, she said something that stopped me. You're the calm one, aren't you? I raised a brow. What do you mean? You walk slow. You listen more than you speak. You look people in the eye. That kind of calm is rare. I laughed softly. I don't feel calm. You don't have to. You just have to be steady. It matters. She touched my forearm, just lightly, and said, come by anytime. Benji would love you. And frankly, I could use a friend who doesn't talk about Paw Patrol or teething rings. I'd like that, I said. Then I left, walking slower than usual. Back in my apartment, I didn't turn on the TV, didn't check my phone. I just sat there, thinking about grilled cheese, about soft light in a warm kitchen, about a woman who didn't need saving, but let me help anyway. Dana didn't try to distract me with sex or break me open with poetry. She just let me sit at her table, chew slowly, and feel like I belonged. And in a world where I wasn't sure what I meant to anyone anymore, that meant everything. The 6th floor always felt a little quieter than the rest of the building. Less foot traffic. More mystery. I hadn't been up there until the night I couldn't sleep, again. A thunderstorm rolled over the city, fat drops of rain hammering the windows like urgent fingers. I wandered up with a beer in hand and no purpose, hoping the view from higher up might offer perspective. That's when I saw her. Evelyn. She was barefoot on the hallway floor, back against the wall, camera in her lap, rain sliding down the window beside her like melted silver. Her hair was damp and wild, dark curls clinging to her neck and cheekbones. She wore a gray tee that barely reached her thighs and a look that told you she'd seen the world and had a secret opinion about it. Her eyes met mine before I could say a word. "You look like a man hoping the rain will wash him clean," she said. "Or drown me," I replied. She grinned. "Either way, welcome to the 6th floor." Evelyn didn't belong in a building like this. She moved like someone used to airports, not stairwells. Her skin held the sun in places the rest of us forgot existed. When she stood, she did it with purpose. Every motion wrapped in ease, like her body had been choreographed by wanderlust itself. "Caleb, right?" she asked as we leaned against the hallway window. "You know my name?" "I know everyone's name. I keep a file." I laughed. "You're kidding." "Half. I'm a photographer. Faces matter. Names anchor them." "You live here?" "Sometimes. I rent 602 between trips. It's a home base, or a landing pad, depending on the week." "Where do you go?" She tilted her head, thinking. "Last month, Morocco, then Iceland. Before that, Bangkok." I chase light. And chaos. Chaos photographs well. We talked for an hour without moving. The rain became background noise. She asked questions like she was studying me. Curious, but not invasive. I told her about Lila. About Mia, Harper, Blair, Dana. I didn't say names, but she caught on. "You're collecting women," she said. "No," I said quietly. "They're collecting me." The next evening, she knocked on my door at 11:14 p.m. She held 2 bottles, 1 wine, 1 whiskey, and a Polaroid camera. "We're going to the roof," she said. "You need a moment." "I need sleep." "You need proof that you're still alive." I followed her. The roof was slick from the earlier storm, the air cool and humming with electricity. Evelyn poured us wine into paper cups and handed me the camera. "Take a picture of me," she said. I raised the camera. "Why?" "Because in the morning, you'll want to know if this was real." I snapped the shot. She took the camera from my hand, framed me without asking, and captured something before I could pose. "You don't flinch," she said, studying the image. "That's rare. I've been flinching on the inside for months." "Then let's set something on fire." She kissed me. No warning. No build-up. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't slow. It was a flash bulb exploding behind my ribs. Her hands moved to my waist, under my shirt, fingertips cold from the wine bottle. She pulled away, breathing fast. "I don't do regret," she whispered. "Neither do I." We made love on the rooftop, under the stars, under the illusion that the world had paused just for us. She straddled me, slow at first, guiding me with that same ease she carried through airports and train cars. Her body tasted like salt and wine, her lips murmuring things in a language I didn't understand but didn't want translated. After, we lay tangled in a blanket she'd brought. The city pulsed below. The wine was gone. "I don't fall in love," she said. "I'm not asking you to. But I leave people different." I looked at her. "You already have." She rolled toward me, resting her cheek on my chest. "You feel like a closed suitcase. Heavy, buckled, ready to burst. And you want to unzip it?" "No. I just want to be there when you do it yourself." Morning came. She was gone. But on my kitchen table, under my coffee mug, was a Polaroid. Me, half smiling, shirtless, the tattoo Blair drew still visible on my chest, the edge of a rooftop in the background. On the back, Evelyn had scribbled, "You're not broken. You're just unclaimed." Later that day, I found myself standing in the hallway between floors, fingertips brushing the doors of 204, 305, 408, 501, 602. Each one a different heartbeat. Each one echoing a version of me I hadn't known existed. And for the first time since I left Lila, I didn't miss her at all. It didn't happen all at once. That would have made it easier to explain. But what unfolded in that building, the quiet choreography of glances, doors left slightly open, late-night knocks, and lingering silences, it built slowly, like layers of heat rising off pavement. Each woman in her own orbit, each story its own storm. And somehow, I had become the still point in the center of it all. I was no longer just Caleb from 202. I had become the building's confession box. It started with Mia. I knocked one night, just to check on her ankle. She'd been pushing herself too hard, she admitted, trying to stretch further, walk longer, do more. We sat on her couch with our knees touching, her foot propped up on a stack of books, and she told me about the stage. About how the silence of not dancing was louder than any applause she ever remembered. Sometimes I forget I'm still allowed to be beautiful, she whispered. I touched her hand. She didn't pull away. You still are, I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we stayed like that for almost an hour. Nothing more, nothing less. Just gravity between two bruised people trying to remember their worth. Harper knocked on my door 2 nights later. No words, just a half smirk, a bottle of something strong, and a need in her eyes that wasn't subtle. Rough day? I asked. My ex sent a wedding invitation, she muttered, sliding past me. He's marrying the woman he met in a hot yoga class 3 months after leaving me. I hope they sweat themselves to death. We drank on the floor of my apartment, and when her sarcasm started to crack, I kissed her before she could fall apart. It was desperate, fast, but behind the frenzy was something else, trust. She needed a safe place to unravel, and somehow, I'd become it. Don't fall in love with me, she warned after. I won't, I said, though part of me already loved the way she said it. With Blair, it was different. We didn't kiss again, not yet, but she let me read parts of her novel. The protagonist was suspiciously familiar. Wounded, trying too hard not to be seen. I laughed and asked if she was using me. I'm honoring you, she corrected. You're my proof that a man can be broken and still have edges sharp enough to matter. She traced my tattoo with her pen one night, right through my shirt. One day, she said softly, I'm going to ink this for real. And when I do, you'll know the version of yourself you gave me is permanent. I didn't answer, but her words stayed with me, carved deeper than ink ever could. Dana invited me to dinner again. This time, Benji was there. He clung to her leg at first, wary of the stranger with tired eyes and an awkward smile. But by the end of the meal, he was sitting in my lap, babbling nonsense as he stuffed peas into his mouth. He likes you, Dana said, amused. I like him too. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You're good with him. You be a good dad. I never got the chance, I said quietly. Why not? Lila didn't want kids. Said it would tie her down. Dana didn't say anything, but her expression said enough. She brought me a beer and sat beside me on the couch while Benji slept in the next room. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. She let me hold her hand while the world outside softened. Evelyn returned a week later. She texted at 2:03 a.m. Evelyn 6:02. Rooftop. Bring tequila. I did. We lay side by side on the gravel, her head on my chest again, her camera clicking every few minutes as she photographed nothing and everything. You missed me, she asked. I thought about you more than I should have. She smiled. You're still unclaimed. And you still don't fall in love. No, she whispered, kissing me once. But I do remember the ones who teach me something. Then we made love again, slower this time, under a sky full of stars that didn't ask questions. At some point, without ceremony, I became part of the building's pulse. I started fixing things, Dana's cabinet, Harper's broken door latch, the bulb in Mia's closet. I carried groceries, held elevators, walked Benji to daycare with Dana when she had too much to juggle. People began to notice. Hey, it's the guy from 202, a neighbor said one morning, holding the door open for me. You're the one the women keep talking about, someone else chuckled in the elevator. And just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. But here's the strangest part. None of the women knew about the others. Or maybe they did, and chose not to ask. There were no jealous glances, no whispered accusations. Just this quiet acknowledgement that each of them needed something, and I had somehow become the place where their needs didn't feel like burdens. Mia needed tenderness. Harper needed distraction. Blair needed reflection. Dana needed help. Evelyn needed freedom. And maybe, just maybe, I needed all of them. Not as replacements for Lila. Not as trophies. Not even as lovers. But as mirrors. Each woman reflected a version of me I'd buried. Each gave me a piece of myself back. One night, after leaving Dana's place, Benji asleep on the couch, Dana curled up in a blanket with a book. I found myself standing in the middle of the hallway between the 2nd and 6th floors. 6 doors. 6 stories. 6 women. And me, at the center. Not lost. Not broken. Just wanted. It happened on a Sunday. I was walking back from brunch with Dana and Benji. She'd insisted on paying. I insisted harder, when I saw Lila standing outside the building. She didn't belong there. Hair too styled. Makeup too perfect. Dressed like she thought Heartbreak had a dress code. Her heels clicked across the lobby floor like punctuation marks, sharp and angry. She didn't see me at first. I slipped through the side entrance, watching from the corner like a man peeking into a memory he didn't miss. She was holding a paper coffee cup like a prop. No lipstick smudge. She hadn't taken a sip. "Excuse me," she said to the concierge. "Can you tell me which unit Caleb Morgan is in? I forgot the number." The concierge looked her over and shook her head. "Sorry, we don't give out resident info without authorization. I'm his wife." "That may be true, but I just need his floor." The elevator dinged. A young woman walked in and smiled at the concierge. "Hey, has Caleb been around today?" "Which one?" Lila snapped. The woman blinked. "Caleb from 202. Tall, quiet, hot in a broody way." I swear the silence in the lobby thickened. Lila turned slowly, her mouth a thin line. "What did you say?" The woman shrugged, stepping into the elevator. "He's kinda legendary around here. Ask any woman above the first floor." The doors closed. Lila stood frozen, coffee cup still untouched. She buzzed 202 30 minutes later. I let her wait. Then, finally, I opened the door. "Hi," she said, trying to smile like nothing had shattered. "Lila." She looked around. "So this is where you've been hiding." I wouldn't call it hiding. Her eyes scanned the apartment. Minimal, clean, sparse. "It's so plain. It's peaceful." She scoffed. "And I suppose you've been spending your peaceful nights alone." "I've been spending them however I damn well please." That shut her up. She walked in without invitation, heels clicking against the floor. I saw the names. "What names?" "On the building directory. Mia, Harper, Blair, Dana, Evelyn. Different floors. Different tastes." I didn't flinch. "And?" Her voice dropped. "You really went and made this into your own harem, didn't you?" I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "You asked for an open marriage, Lila. You just didn't expect me to walk through the door you opened." "That's not what I meant." "No? Then what did you mean?" She hesitated, face tightening. "I thought we'd explore. Together." "No, you thought you'd explore. And I'd stay." Silence. She stepped closer. "I thought you'd fight for me." "I did. For years." Her bottom lip trembled, but I wasn't moved. "Not anymore." "I thought you'd be miserable," she admitted. "You're not supposed to." She gestured wildly. "Thrive." "Funny," I said. "Everyone else seems to think I'm just getting started." She followed me to the window. "This isn't you," she said. "This building. These women." "No," I replied. "This is the version of me you didn't want to see. The one who wasn't content being background noise in his own life." Her voice broke. "Do you love them? Each of them showed me something real. Something you forgot how to give." "That's not an answer. I don't owe you one." We stood in silence for a long time. Then, softly, "I miss you." "No, you miss the version of me who never said no." Her eyes filled. "Please, Caleb, come home. We can fix this." I stepped back. "There is no home. You left it when you made our love negotiable." She stormed out eventually. No grand exit, just a soft click of the door that didn't echo like it used to. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Harper, someone stormed out of your place like you just canceled her subscription to Control. You okay?" "Mia." I saw a woman crying in the stairwell. "Yours?" "Evelyn. Heard drama. Need tequila?" "Dana. Want to come over?" "Benji drew you as a superhero today." "Blair. I'm adding a chapter to the book called When She Found Out. Want to help title it?" I smiled. Not because Lila was gone, but because I was no longer the man waiting to be chosen. I had chosen myself. And 6 women, each in their own way, had reminded me how. I had to learn how to move between worlds. Each woman existed in her own tempo, her own rhythm, like 6 distinct songs playing through the walls of this old building. And I, somehow, was becoming fluent in all of them. A quiet translator between stories of grief, desire, survival, chaos, and healing. I wasn't juggling them. That would suggest trickery. I was balancing them, like elements that didn't cancel each other out, but instead made me whole. Mia needed mornings. Soft ones. I'd knock at 8 a.m. with coffee and a breakfast sandwich, and she'd greet me in a robe, hair tied up, that slight limp still in her step. We'd sit on the couch with her leg propped across my lap, and I'd massage her ankle, while she updated me on therapy. Today I managed a full arabesque, she whispered once, eyes gleaming with tears. Shaky, ugly, but it was mine. I kissed her then, not out of lust, but reverence. She didn't crave sex. She craved touch, presence. I gave her that. In return, she gave me something quieter, faith. That broken things could still move gracefully. Harper needed nights. Nights she didn't have to pretend. She'd barge in without knocking, bottle in hand. Usually already 3 sips in. Her laugh was rough, her kisses urgent, her clothes always half off before the door even clicked shut. We fucked like 2 people trying to forget their own names. Sweaty, loud, shameless. But sometimes afterward, when the air cooled and the silence settled in, she'd rest her head on my chest and whisper things like, "Do you ever feel like a scratched CD? Like I'm stuck repeating the same line?" Exactly. I used to. She'd nod, then drift off. And in the morning, she'd be gone every time. But she always came back. Blair needed evenings. Quiet ones, wrapped in candlelight and conversation. She didn't touch me often, not in the way the others did. But when she did, it was deliberate, like underlining a sentence in her head. We'd lie side by side on her bed, my arm behind her head, her journal resting on her stomach. She'd read me bits of her manuscript and ask, "Is that still you?" Sometimes it was. Sometimes it wasn't. She once said, "You're like an unreliable narrator who finally learned how to tell the truth." I didn't correct her. She was writing me into permanence, and I was letting her. Dana needed help, but never asked for it. I'd swing by when I knew she was swamped. I'd do dishes, fix a drawer, hold Benji while she showered. We kissed, now and then. Sweet, unhurried kisses in the middle of domestic noise, like 2 people stealing a breath inside a whirlwind. She never asked me to stay the night, but every time I left, she walked me to the door with a tired smile and said, "Thank you." One night, Benji looked up from his drawing and said, "Are you going to be my dad?" I froze. Dana choked on her tea. We laughed it off, but something lodged in my chest and stayed there. Evelyn didn't need me, but she wanted me. She'd text from airports. Evelyn 602, Ugandan border. Customs agent has a thing for leather boots. Wish you were here. Evelyn 602, sunset in Lisbon. Taking a photo of a couple arguing on a balcony. Thought of you. When she was in town, we didn't waste time. Rooftops, elevators, showers. We kissed like postcards, quick, intense, and fleeting. She once said, "You belong to the world now. I just helped remind you." I believed her, even as she left again. And me? I became a version of myself I didn't recognize, but liked. I laughed more. I listened harder. I felt. I was no longer the man waiting to be enough for one woman. I was a man who had discovered his enoughness in 6 very different ones. And, more importantly, in himself. Each gave me something I hadn't known I needed. Mia, gentleness. Harper, permission. Blair, reflection. Dana, steadiness. Evelyn, freedom. Myself, choice. One night, I sat in the stairwell between floors, a quiet hum vibrating in my bones. I'd just come from Dana's. Benji had fallen asleep in my arms. Harper had texted a photo of her in my old hoodie. Mia had sent a voice memo of her rehearsal. Blair had dropped a single sentence into my inbox. He didn't just rebuild. He reimagined. And Evelyn. She'd left a Polaroid in my mailbox. No message, just her smiling on a beach with my name scribbled in the sand behind her. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't performing. I wasn't waiting to be validated. I was living. And each life I touched made mine feel more true. She came back a second time. Not like before. Demanding, cold, wrapped in that faux confidence she wore like perfume. This time she knocked. Gently. I opened the door and didn't say anything. Just leaned against the frame and watched her try to remember how to look small. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "You've always had everywhere else." She stepped in, slower this time. Her eyes scanned the room like she expected something different. Some chaos. Some sign of the man she left behind unraveling in real time. But all she found was a made bed, half-read books, a record player in the corner humming soft jazz. I hadn't cleaned for her. This was just how I lived now. "You changed," she said quietly. I grew. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but there was nothing to fight. No defense against the fact that I wasn't the man who used to shrink to make her feel big. "Are you seeing someone?" she asked. I gave a slow breath. Not just one. Her eyes narrowed. So it's true then. All those women. They're not yours to judge. Her voice cracked. Did you love me at all? I did. God, I did. So what happened? You asked for an open marriage. That wasn't supposed to mean this. No, I said, walking past her, pouring water into a glass like the conversation didn't need volume to be real. You wanted freedom and expected me to wait for your return like some sad backup plan. She said nothing. I drank. She stared at me like a stranger she once saw in passing. I regret it, she whispered. I don't. Silence settled between us again, but not the tense, fragile kind. This was heavier. Final. She walked slowly toward the couch and sat down. Caleb, I miss us. There is no us. There's the version of us where I gave and you took, where I apologized for being too quiet, too stable, too predictable. I didn't know how much that would matter until it was gone. And I didn't know how much of myself I lost trying to be enough for you. She started to cry. Real tears. No show. I feel like you're someone else now, she said. I am. I thought I wanted new experiences, she whispered. But I just wanted attention. I didn't think you'd go. You thought I'd stay? That I'd wait. She nodded, then wiped her face, frustration bleeding through. So what now? You're just going to move on with 6 women? Play house across floors? They're not placeholders, Lila. They're people. Women who saw me, really saw me, when I wasn't trying to be anyone's project. You're not that man, she snapped. You're not this confident, desirable, center of the universe guy. I smiled. That's where you were wrong. She stood abruptly. I can be better. I don't want better. I want different. I want real. And you had the real me and asked him to go looking for someone else. She took a breath, stepped toward me. Caleb, just come home. No, you're making a mistake. No, Lila. I made one. I stayed too long in a life that didn't fit. Tears welled up again. She looked around like she was seeing ghosts in my furniture. The life she abandoned was now something she couldn't access, because it didn't belong to her anymore. I loved you, she said. You loved controlling me. That's not fair. It's honest. She walked to the door, lingered. You're not angry anymore, she whispered. That scares me. I'm not angry, I said. I'm free. Her hand hovered on the knob. Will I ever see you again? Not like this, I said. Not as someone who belongs to you. She nodded, defeated, then opened the door and paused. Were they worth it? She asked without looking back. I didn't hesitate. Every one of them gave me something you never could. The door clicked shut. And this time, I didn't feel it echo. I stood in the hallway for a while, barefoot, heart still and unafraid. Harper's door was open just a crack. Mia's light was glowing through soft curtains. Blair's window flickered as she typed, no doubt writing the next chapter of our mutual redemption. Dana's apartment hummed with lullaby music. Evelyn was still gone, but the rooftop still carried her scent, wild, wind-tangled, and free. And for the first time since I left Lila, I didn't want to go back, not even to say goodbye. It was late. The building was quiet. Not quiet like silence, but quiet like understanding. The kind of hush that wraps around you after the final page of a book, when the story lingers in the air like heat, even after you close the cover. I sat in the hallway between floors. The same place I used to walk past without ever looking. Now, it felt like the spine of the whole building. Like a pulse ran through it, through the pipes, the walls, the wood beneath my feet. I wasn't sure how long I'd been sitting there, barefoot in sweats, a cup of lukewarm coffee in my hand. Time moved differently now. Slower. More deliberate. Every second didn't ache the way it used to. Across from me, 6 doors glowed behind soft porch lights and the occasional flicker of passing headlights through drawn blinds. And mine. 202. Each one still. Each one breathing with memory. Mia's door had a new welcome mat now. A pair of pink ballet flats rested outside, worn but cleaned. Her ankle was healing. Her heart was, too. She smiled more now. Laughed at things instead of brushing them off. She told me the other day that she was applying to teach at a local dance studio. I thought I was done, she'd said teary-eyed. But maybe I was just rerouting. She hugged me when I congratulated her. Longer than usual. No kiss. Just closeness. Like she knew we were both standing at a final curtain call, and neither of us needed an encore. Harper had started dating again, loudly, recklessly. But she still knocked on my door when the silence got too thick, and I let her in without conditions. We hadn't had sex in weeks. It didn't matter. She called me her reset button. Every time I think I've broken myself again, I remember you exist, she said last night over pizza. You're my proof that not everything ends in fire. Then she kissed my cheek and left before midnight, smiling with her whole face. Blair finished her novel. She handed me a printed copy with sticky notes marking the scenes inspired by us. The protagonist had survived betrayal. Yes, but more than that, he'd learned how to see himself in the aftermath. I don't think you were ever the side character, Caleb, she said as she pressed the book into my hands. You were just in the wrong story. Her fingers brushed the tattoo she'd finally inked on my chest last week. Same symbol. Cleaner lines. Now, she whispered, it's permanent. Dana didn't cry when I told her I was leaving the building. She just poured coffee and sat beside me while Benji drew on the floor with crayons. I knew you wouldn't stay, she said softly. You were never mine. Just mine for now. You gave me something I didn't know I'd been missing. She smiled. You gave Benji a reason to laugh again. I kissed her, slow and deep. Then I knelt beside her son, ruffled his hair, and told him to keep drawing superheroes. He looked up at me and said, You're still mine even if you go. That one almost broke me. Evelyn was back in town. She found me on the rooftop at dusk. You're leaving, she said. Not a question. I nodded. She handed me a Polaroid. Me on that first night we made love, wind in my hair, eyes wide and scared. You found your edge, she said. Now go cut something with it. She didn't ask me to stay. She never would. That's why she was the last person I saw before making the decision. Because she was the only one who never needed me to belong. The building didn't change me. The women didn't fix me. But they each handed me something I didn't know I was missing. A mirror. A flame. A pen. A meal. A camera. A door. And together, they built a man. Not the version Lila married. Not the one who folded himself to fit her needs. But this version. The one who sat in the hallway alone at midnight, heart full. Not because he was in love with 6 women, but because he had finally fallen in love with himself. I went back to Lila one last time. Not to stay. Not to explain. Not to hurt her. Just to close the story. She opened the door, surprised to see me. She was barefoot. Unmade. I handed her a small box. Inside, the wedding ring I hadn't worn in months. You don't have to say anything, she whispered. I didn't leave you for 6 women, I said, quiet but steady. I left because I finally understood I deserved the version of myself I am in that building. She nodded, blinking fast. You're not the man I married. No, I said. And thank God for that. Then I turned and walked away. For good. I signed a longer lease the next day. Not in room 202. I moved to 407. My own space. New walls. Clean slate. The hallway still hummed behind me. 6 doors glowing softly. And the one across from mine, empty for now. Who knows what story that one might hold. For now, though, I'm not rushing to open any more doors. I'm just learning how to be the man who finally unlocked himself.